Episode number 37?
Gotta remember.
37. We're calling it 30. Yeah, 36 was over the top.
Okay. 37. He's Tony. I'm Mike. We are here to watch Will Burn. This episode 37?
37.
You think? If not, we'll correct it here. 1974 sci-fi-ish fantasy thingy Zardoz. Written, directed, produced by John Boorman, who also did Excalibur, who also did
Deliverance.
who also did...
Oh, God.
I know there's a ton of others.
Yeah, there's several others. I'm sorry, you caught me off guard with that one, so I'm just kind of excited to talk about this one because I never thought that you would pick this movie. So
it's James Bond in a red fucking diaper. I mean, what do you want? So starring Sean Connery as Zed. Funny thing is, this was originally
supposed to be Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds, yeah, but he fell ill.
Yep, and they did this after Deliverance. I think this was done the year after Deliverance. So Burt Reynolds and John Boorman had a working relationship, and he had signed on. He was committed to doing this one, but he got sick and he had to pull out. And Sean Connery, who apparently was having trouble finding work. Yeah, he was having trouble finding work, even though he had been James Bond. But he signed on to do this one, and I think it did right by the film. I think so. I don't think that Burt Reynolds would have worked in this role.
I don't know. Because I'm not used to seeing Burt Reynolds act in a serious role.
Yeah.
But then again, all the stuff before this was, wasn't comedic. Deliverance stuff wasn't comedic. Like Sharky's Machine and Gator Bait and all that stuff. That wasn't like comedic stuff either. It wasn't until later he started getting into comedy. So maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. We'll never know. But further into the cast here, we got Charlotte Rampling as Consuela, Sarah Kestelman as May, now Buggy as Arthur Frayne / Zardoz, and John Alberton as Friend.
This is a fascinating film. And here's the thing. This is proto-Excalibur. I don't know if you're aware of that one, but what had happened was John Boorman had set out to do The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And while some people would be like, well, how do you do Lord of the Rings in one movie? And I'm thinking, this man did Excalibur in one movie, cradle to grave, the entire story, and it never felt cheated. So if anybody was ever going to be capable of doing it, it was John Boorman.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently, he put together his budget. He was getting ready to go into production, and the studio said, that's a little more than we wanted to spend for The Lord of the Rings. Ha, joke's on you. But so John Boorman decided, well, you know what? I'm going to take a $1.6 million budget. I'm going to write my own story, and this movie, if you watch it, it looks like Excalibur. The shots, all the horseback, the battle scenes, all that stuff. So I know that Boorman worked with a lot of the same people over and over and over again, and the misty forests and the big vistas and
I wouldn't have put it together until you said it.
Yeah.
But now that you say it, and I'm replaying the movie in my head, it's like, oh my God, you're right. Yeah. This is like the blueprint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now,
not the story, but like the cinematography and the way it's shot.
Yeah, cinematography and scene structure and dialogue, and a lot of the folks that were in Excalibur were also in this. John Boorman's daughter that played Igraine is in this. And I'm also going to say this. This film is more influential than it's given credit for. Everybody remembers this picture of Sean Connery in the red diaper. But the fact of the matter is, George Lucas ripped off the hairstyle for Princess Leia a couple years later for A New Hope. This has a look that's very similar wardrobe-wise to Logan's Run. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was lifted from this and borrowed. And the other thing that's kind of fascinating about this is that all the effect shots were done in camera. There was nothing that was done post-production. So when you see like the projections and the lights on their faces and all that kind of stuff, that was actually done right there. And this was also, Sean Connery like wound up doing Highlander 7 years after this one. And he comes off very much like
10,
Ramirez. 81.
10.
This was 74, so it was 73 or 74.
81?
80 or 81.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Why does I think it's like 84, 85?
It was earlier than that. I remember I was way too young to go see it, and I was like, "Oh, look, they're fighting with swords on a rooftop." So, but Sean Connery very much looks almost exactly like Ramirez in Highlander between the two films. He's a little more silvery in Highlander, but you know, it happens to all of us. I mean, my shit just fell out, but his is going silver. So, you know, are we getting into the plot?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, actually,
oh, wait, just one more thing. Rick and Morty referenced this in the Raising Gazorpazorp episode. As a matter of fact, it's directly correlated. The head floats in, the guns spit out.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, right
and it's the episode where Morty has a child with the sex robot, and you know, it's a ton of fun. So this movie is far more influential. It gets laughed off. A lot of people just like, oh, it's absurd, it's stupid, it's one of those 70s cheesy things. This was before science fiction kind of redefined itself, because 2001 had come out. And while it was visually absolutely a stunning and a masterpiece, it was very deep and very philosophical. Yeah. And it wasn't until, you know, almost 10 years later, 77, and 2001 was 68.
Yeah.
So that was like when everything got cemented as to this is what science fiction is with Star Wars. So there was this floundering period in the middle, and John Borman wanted to do something that was heady and philosophical and dense. And there is a lot to unpack in this film.
There's a lot in this, and we'll unpack it here in just one second.
Absolutely.
Zardoz speaks to you, his chosen ones.
So, ton to unpack in this one. This is, and the thing that's funny is that post 2001, a lot of the science fiction films that were coming out were heavy idea films. They weren't worried about the visuals so much. They weren't going to be able to do what Stanley Kubrick had done, and they didn't get $10 million to do it, which is what 2001 cost, and that's 1968 money.
Yeah.
So that was a really big deal, and the film was in production forever and ever, but they had to invent the technology to make 2001, and 2001 at the time was considered a box office flop, a bit of it. The studio was not terribly impressed with the returns on it. Now, it's gone on to legendary status, but so you had a lot of smaller budgeted films. Ironically, Ralph Bakshi got to do an animated version of Lord of the Rings in '76, which was a year before he did Wizards, and that came out the same time as Star Wars, pretty much. But a lot of fascinating science fiction comes out of this time. Logan's Run had a lot to do with age and getting older, and you know, is it time to just punch the clock when you hit 30? Is it all downhill after there, like they say? But then they actually get out of, not carousel, what is it?
It's carousel.
Carousel's where they're renewed.
Right, yeah.
I don't remember the name of the city that they were
matter.
in. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway.
Well, this is just the opposite take of it. Instead of worrying about when we're going to punch out the clock, we're going to keep this clock fucking rolling. We're going to keep this party going.
Yes.
Quite literally, in some instances, for the renegades.
This is where they live, the renegades.
But I'll let you get into this.
Well, there's three classes of people. There are there's the Exterminators, which Sean Connery is one of those, and they are sent out by the Eternals, and the Eternals basically beckon them to go and cleanse the land of the Brutals, and the Brutals are the peons, the regular folks like you and I. That's basically they survived some post-apocalyptic event. I don't know what the apocalyptic event was.
They don't really say it. Just say it's just kind of like just the general downfall of humanity, like famine and wars and things like that. They just kind of give like just a blanket, like we up. So we decided to isolate ourselves from the shitty world outside, inside our little ark, and they're going to preserve all the knowledge of humanity, and they're just going to go on, and they were the elite. This is revealed later in the film that they were the rich and they were the elite, and they decided to wall themselves off and let the chips fall where they may.
The world was dying. We took all that was good and made an oasis here. We few, the rich, the powerful, the clever, cut ourselves off to guard the knowledge and treasures of civilization as the world plunged into a dark age.
But then they decided that they needed the exterminators to go out and cleanse the land of the brutals.
No, what they needed was they needed the peasants to do some shit for them.
Yeah, they needed wheat.
Yeah, they needed food and some other stuff. So they developed the exterminators to first cleanse them. Yeah. And then it's like, well, now we need them to do other things. So we're going to train the exterminators to train the brutals how to grow
farm.
Wheat, to put down the gun. Because at first it was, the gun is good, the penis is bad.
The gun is good. The gun is good. The penis is evil. The penis shoots seeds and makes new life to poison the earth with a plague of men.
Meaning that you're going to go out and kill the brutals, but you don't want people multiplying. We don't want the peasants to be multiplying. We want to kill them off. But shit changed.
Yeah, actually what happens is and this is kind of a fish out of water story, weirdly. Sean Connery, Zed, he actually gets into the vortexes, which the vortexes are where the Eternals live, and they have their little, sanctuaries that are set up. And he's brought in for study because he's different than the other exterminators. And through the course of the story, you find out that Zed is actually a mutant. He's not a normal exterminator.
You are a mutant. Second, maybe third generation. Therefore genetically stable.
He is intelligent. He has taught himself how to read. He is...
No, that's not true.
It is.
No, it's not true. No.
Well, Arthur
actually,
teaches
Arthur,
him who is one of the...
Well, and Friend also, because Friend is actually the one who actually...
He's in on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is in on it.
And he helped Arthur with the inspiration. Basically what it boils down to is the group that have decided that they're going to live forever and that they are going to be the sole keepers of all the knowledge of humanity have been alive for so long that they have become either apathetic, to where they're completely bored with life, they have completely lost their way, which is the group that we're actually seeing the most of, or they have more or less started to go insane because they've been alive for so long. And one of the punishments that they have for any infractions of the rules is that they age them, and they'll age them anywhere from a few months to several years to, I think the longest punishment was up to 50.
Yeah, because they were going to punish May for getting it on with Zed for 50 years.
So this is your scientific investigation. There's another word for it. Bestiality.
Interspecies erotica, bucko. Interspecies erotica.
For this you will be aged 50 years, no less. No man, woman, or beast will ever desire you again.
Yeah.
And which is to say that you don't die, you just are now old and your body is infirm, but you still get to basically be tortured and go, through your, live for eternity with a body that don't work no more instead of being young and beautiful is what it gets down
you get to be
to.
old and decrepit for an eternity.
Yeah, that sounds
that's like what it is. So so if you go against the group, you're considered a renegade. You age and you're thrown in with the rest of the renegades, and then like the apathetic people are just out in the towns, like and just like in the village, just kind of hanging out, really doing nothing, like literally doing nothing, just
Standing there
like
more or
zombies.
less frozen. Exactly.
Like
exactly.
zombies, so.
Didn't Zardoz tell you about the apathetics?
It's a disease. And it's slowly creeping through all the vortexes.
That's why Zardoz made you grow crops. To feed these people.
And again, because Zed is a mutant, basically there's a large group of the Eternals that want to die, and specifically it's the apathetics and it's the ones that have gone insane, the renegades, and they.
See, that's the thing. The renegades aren't insane. They just don't want to. They're not buying into that bullshit thing that the Internals are doing now. So they're not insane. They're just.
Well, they're considered insane by the normals,
right?
You know, but technically, no, you're absolutely correct. They are actually revealed to be not insane. And Arthur is like really, he's the one that kind of orchestrated and did all this, because it turns out that the mutation that makes Sean Connery special was something that Arthur actually planted into the Brutals, so that, or not into the Brutals, into the Exterminators, so that he would actually be able to more or less fulfill this desire.
Here I would like to claim some credit, if I may. You see, our death wish was devious and deep. As Zardoz said, I was able to choose your forefathers. It was careful genetic breeding that produced this mutant, this slave who could free his masters, and Friend was my accomplice.
That they have. I don't want to call it a prophecy.
No, it's not a prophecy, because there's no stories about it. There's nothing baked into like in Dune, where there'll be a time when somebody will come and there'll be a savior on this bullshit. No. It's none of that crap at all whatsoever. Zed is handpicked and hand-trained to do this. The funny thing is, though, Zed feels betrayed because he's discovered that Zardoz isn't what he thinks he is. He's not a god. Zardoz is Arthur Frayne. And he was known this by given the book The Wizard of Oz, which is so beautifully done and handled, because here's Zardoz, this big giant thing. It's all smoke and mirrors. This is big giant talking head that's scary and appears powerful, but it's just this little man behind the curtain.
The great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Yes.
And then when you see Zardoz, it's put the hand over and it's Wizard, and then Oz, Zardoz.
Yeah. So that was it.
The Wizard of Oz. Zardoz.
So,
he literally figures out that was a clue that was intentionally left for him to figure out that Zardoz is not their god, that he is not a god at all. It's just a man behind a curtain that's pulling the strings, that's getting stuff done and manipulating everybody involved.
And so Zed was pissed off about that, and he shot Arthur Frayne, knowing that he is Zardoz. But since he's immortally, he ends up coming back anyway at the end, and that's kind of the funny thing at the end. So long and short of this, so we're not talking about this for an eternity in the plot. I mean, because there is a lot of details. I mean, we could talk for hours about this movie. There's so much going on in it. But in the end, Arthur achieves his goals through Zed, and they break the tabernacle, which is what kind of gives them their immortality. And no sooner they break that and they achieve mortality, in comes the Exterminators and mows every motherfucker down. Every fucking one of them.
Elimination! 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 Elimination!
Except for Zed and Consuela, who take off.
Actually, there's a couple of the other Eternals that do get out as well. I think May actually survives.
But the majority of them get mowed down.
Yeah.
The Eternals, the
Renegades are
mowed
they
down.
They want to die. The apathetics
and the apathetics
all want to die.
Yeah.
So it's.
I forgot all about that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember now they achieve mortality, and then here comes the Exterminators. I'm like, oh shit. So you got what you asked for, motherfucker. So you are.
They got what they asked for. for. They got what they wanted at the end of the day. So there's the collapse of the vortexes at the end. And there's more than one vortex. They're in, I think, Vortex 3, and there was another Vortex 7.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So,
that detail, yeah.
So there's a lot more going on. So there are obviously more Eternals that are floating around out there in the ether, so to speak. Oh, and we'll pause right there. We'll be back after these commercial after this PSA. Yeah.
Are you dead?
Not yet.
Well, you're gonna be.
We're the Russo brothers from Russo and Brothers Funeral Home. You'll die when you see our affordable prices.
Open casket?
Closed casket.
Kiss casket?
No casket.
Russo and Brothers Funeral Home, where we put the fun in funeral.
Anyway.
So there's multiple vortexes.
Yes, there's multiple vortexes. There's little havens of Eternals all over the place. And part of me would kind of like to have seen some of the other vortexes and wonder if they had the same issue with the Renegades and the Apathetics. They never quite reveal that one. But the other thing,
I'm okay with that.
I enjoyed the symbolism that it was Zed's. It was a tear, or was it saliva or sweat that they licked off of his face? There was the one girl that was apathetic, and he was going to rape her, and then like when she didn't respond at all, it did nothing for him. So he basically got up and went away.
Yeah.
But she was apparently like shooken out of her apathy just long enough to, I think it was sweat. I'm not positive. It could have been saliva. It could have been, it was a bodily fluid.
Well, it was on his face. It wasn't on his lips. It was like right here. So but anyways, yeah. So and then she kissed him and drew life from him, and then she started kissing the other apathetic. So
spreading the ability to die to all of them.
Well, it wasn't really spread the ability to die. It was just I think it was more of like the your life, you know, like
the essence of life.
Essence, like yes.
I'm gonna kick it up a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
life
you.
and death. See, and that's like I said, this film is very heavy because it tackles that. Like, you know what? If there's no end to life, it becomes meaningless at some point. No matter how long you alive you are, or how much intelligence you have, or how much stuff you have to keep you busy. Because the vast majority of the Eternals, they're baking bread and they're bored out of their
They do a lot of mundane
mind.
bullshit stuff.
Yeah,
and everybody has to do their boring mundane stuff.
It's Friend's Day to make the food. He must do this without help, as we all do. It's fundamental to our society that we do everything for ourselves on a basis of absolute equality.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like part of their routine. Shit, if I did the same thing over and over for 300 years, I'd be ready to die too. Punch that clock out.
Yeah, and the other thing
and
is...
then the funny thing is too, is like they killed themselves a couple times just to kind of get out of the boredom for a bit.
And they're also all hung up on ritual.
Yeah.
Everything is a ritual with them. When they sit to have a meal together, it's a ritual. When they have to make a decision, it's a ritual.
Vote. Give your votes.
And it's just like all these trappings, these hollow trappings that are no longer fulfilling because they've been alive for so long. And the Renegades, as they're called, they all of them have older bodies. I don't recall seeing any young faces in that crowd. I could be wrong.
Well, again, they're Renegades, so they've been punished, so they were aged.
But all of them want out, and they make no secret about it. But weirdly, there's
hang on a second. Let me back up real quick, because also in the Renegades, there are the adults, the original Eternals.
Yes.
Who, when they say they were at an age where they're kind of like, you know what, being immortal is what it's cracked up to be. And so, whereas the Eternals, the younger ones were born into it and kind of grew up with this thing, the older generation were like, this is kind of stupid and kind of pointless.
Yeah.
And so they were the first Renegades. And then, so it's just kind of funny how it's like, well, you're like these old parts. You're like the boomers. We're going to put you, the Renegades are the boomers, so we're putting you with these.
I was going to say, I mean, it's fascinating to me how contemplative this film is about all of these bigger things that, the other thing that I also thought was interesting was his name is Zed. He's obviously the end, of the alphabet. He's the letter Z. So that's all intentional. And I'm sure that there is just like a million little references all over this. When the Exterminators are out, they all wear the Zardoz mask, the face of Zardoz, if you will. And the color red's not incidental. Obviously they're there for bloodshed. They're not screwing around. But all the other Exterminators have rifles. Zed is the only one that has a handgun. He's unique in that regard.
Oh, that's true.
But
I didn't notice that. Yeah,
it's a weird Webley handgun. It's a 6-shooter. It's got 6 bullets in it, but the only way that you can cock it is to twist the barrel, and it's a real gun. It's a Webley. It was considered revolutionary at the time, and I'm thinking it's only revolutionary if you don't have to grab a freshly fired barrel to cock the gun again, because if that's your hand, you're thinking, all right, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. There's also like the pyramid that they go into. That's the entrance to the tabernacle that they see it, and pyramids are all over this, and that's representative of the 3 classes of people: the Exterminators, the Brutals, and the Eternals. There's the 3 groups of the Eternals. 3s are all over this movie. There's a lot of thought that went into this. John Borman didn't just like slap this one out there. He did a lot going into this one, and you can tell this is all him.
Yeah, you could watch this movie over and over and over again and pick up a new detail each time you watch it. There's just so much packed into it. I mean, even each individual scene has got a lot of stuff packed into it. So I'm like I said, we can go on and on and on about this stuff. So,
well, I was going to say this is a bit of a slow burn, because at the beginning of it, the first like 2/3 of the film, you're getting to see what the Eternals are doing to Zed and what his life has become, and they're threatening to exterminate him after 21 days. And then they decide, no, you know what, this shit's gone on long enough. We need to get rid of him now. And then there's a big kind of lump reveal. And there was not a whole lot of slow burn movies at this point. So this was kind of a different sort of film structure for then. There's a lot of slow burn movies now that have come after the fact, but like
I think there's plenty of slow burn movies before this.
Well, not quite in this regard. I don't think the reveal is quite as big as Zed is the mutant and Zardoz is not a god and all that kind of thing. And Zed is also intentionally he's able to stop the Eternals from being able to see his memories. He doesn't, whereas any of the other Exterminators or Brutals, the Eternals can just rip right into their mind and see whatever they want. Zed is capable of resisting that, and that's the reason why he warrants further study. It's a very adult film. It's a very, I'm not going to say it's gratuitous, but
it's graphic.
There's no bones about it. If they're showing nudity, they're showing nudity. If they are showing violence, they are showing violence. But it's very matter of fact about it. It's not doing it to be sensational.
No.
So
just like Excalibur.
Yeah, very much so. Tone-wise, very, very similar. Very, very. Here's the facts of the matter, and here's the story as told it, and these characters are these characters, and they're going to flesh themselves out. I'm not going to, spoon feed you dialogue that's going to explain who these people are.
And there's so much packed in this thing, like we said. It's what, 2 hours long?
I don't know that it's that long. I think it's actually short of 2 hours. I want to say it's like an hour and 45.
Yeah, but I mean, there's just so much in here. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I love it. I really enjoy this movie a lot. Just like as much as not as much as I did at Excalibur. I don't know, man. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I will absolutely watch it again. And if nothing else, just to see what other details are buried in this thing, because there is a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Absolutely.
And we're not doing this film any justice whatsoever talking about it.
You're not wrong about that.
Really
we kind of screwed up the synopsis because of how it's structured. It's hard to talk about this film to somebody who's never seen it because it is such a odd structure to it because of how things are set up and how things are revealed. And parts of it are chronological, and parts of it are done in flashback, and parts of it are done in memory, and parts of it. So it's a bit everywhere. And as long as you can remember that this is pre-Star Wars, as long as you can remember that this is about ideas, not good versus evil, and the good guy's got to beat up the bad. If you can keep all that in mind, and if you are a genuine fan of science fiction, most definitely check this film out. It is so completely worth your time.
I wouldn't say science fiction. If you're a fan of like just philosophical films,
big idea movies.
Yeah, big idea. Yeah, is where to go with this. Don't go into this thing it's because sci-fi, because that's not sci-fi in a space.
Yeah, it's
in a Star Wars sense, or
it's set in the future, but it's a very existential film. It's exploring what it is to be human, what makes you human, when do you quit being human, and what are the ideas that are packed into all of that. Ironically, baked into all of that because bread. And the other thing is, and this is a point we didn't really touch on, is that the Eternals, so many of them have become renegades and so many of them have become apathetic that they can no longer sustain themselves. Their society is falling apart. And that's why they had the Exterminators start having the Brutals farm for them, because they're incapable of taking care of themselves. There is a lot of class struggle involved in this as well. And it is basically, the elite leeching off of the poor to sustain themselves at the cost of everything else, and ultimately that what they're sustaining
doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, and
it's a meaningless existence.
It's their existence is as meaningless as the Brutals.
Yes.
And the Exterminators, they just happen to think that it's not.
Yeah.
And they happen to have the power and the money, I guess, to originally set up the vortexes that says otherwise. And that's really what it boils down to. This film is so worthy of dissection. Watch this with people you enjoy having conversations about.
Yes.
This film will give you some of the most interesting and fascinating conversations. And the other thing is that the ideas presented in the film they're not shaded. No one is represented as right or wrong. It's just all thrown out there in a very even-handed sort of way. You can see everybody's points, but you can also see everybody's breaking points and everything that goes along with that. It's well acted. It's well directed. It could have used a bit more exposition in a couple of spots, but I also understand. I also understand why John Borman didn't put that in there, because he wants you to think about it. He wants you to figure this shit out for yourself, because the blueprints are there. Every idea that he wanted on film is in this film, and he wants you to do the heavy lifting on that. He's giving you the canvas, you do the painting. I'm glad we got this, but I would, knowing that we didn't get John Borman's Lord of the Rings, I feel like we missed out on potentially like the biggest fantasy film ever, because this was a time when there was the swashbucklers of the 40s and the 50s, and nobody had really done a big fantasy film. And because that film, John Borman's, got put on hold, it wasn't until Excalibur came along, 6-7 years later, that we actually got fantasy's first great film. And that being said, we could have got it a decade earlier. So it's more proof that people that, the money people at studios tend to make really dumb decisions when it comes to art and money. So
well, here's a sad thing too, is like after getting Excalibur, why didn't Lord of the Rings get greenlit after that?
I'm pretty positive that it was a big rights issue.
Oh, okay.
And it was just a kind of a bidding war, and then it would wind up in development hell multiple times.
It's a shame, because if anybody could have done Lord of the Rings justice, it would have been John Borman.
Yeah.
And he probably could have done it all in one movie. Damn near.
Yeah, well, it would have been a long movie, but he could have pulled it off in 3 hours.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that whatsoever. The other thing is that, so we got Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and that came out in 76, if I'm not mistaken. And it was supposed to be 2 films. We only got the first one. It didn't do terribly well. It was a really weird thing. And you have to be a Ralph Bakshi fan to really appreciate it.
You really do. I'm not a Ralph Bakshi guy. I tried.
Then Rankin Bass came along, and they did The Hobbit, and they did their animated Lord of the Rings, and I love those films. The Hobbit is still the best version of The Hobbit that's been done.
I'll agree.
Even more so than the Peter Jackson, all that. And not that it wasn't well cast. It's just that the Hobbit cartoon, the Rankin Bass cartoon, it got the tone right, and it got.
Well,
the
that
look
boiled down to the essence of it. There's no bullshit fluff.
Yeah, and they didn't feel a need to pad it or draw it out for
Yeah.
3 movies. It was a short adventure story. You can read The Hobbit in a day. I mean, it's not a terribly long book. It doesn't need to be a 9-hour film. So, and then after that, it sat doing nothing, and it went into development hell, and then finally, we got Peter Jackson's epic Lord of the Rings. But having seen what Boorman did with Excalibur, you know, and watching Zardoz, you just know that was a passion project for him, and I'm sure that he was hugely disappointed when that didn't go through. So I'm glad that we got this one. I feel cheated out of something that would have been incredible, and it would have been a decade ahead of its time.
Yep.
So
I feel the same way. Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately for John Boorman, that had like a budget of 1.4 million and brought in like 1.8.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a success for him. But you know, the man was ahead of his time.
He was totally ahead of his time, and it did go on. It did go on to actually turn a profit slowly. But I was going to say, I watched this, and then I went to like you know what, I don't own Zardoz on Blu-ray, so I went on Amazon to see what the Zardoz Blu-ray is going for, and an out-of-print copy of Zardoz right now is going for $130. So
there you go.
I love you, John Boorman. Can we get a re-release on this one, please? And I promise you, I'll buy it. I mean, I love it, but I don't $130.
He can't.
Love it.
He's dead.
Is he?
Yeah.
Did John Boorman pass away?
Yeah. We covered this in Excalibur.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. He got knighted and then.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So Sir John Boorman to you. Thank you.
Well, okay, but there's always a grain. His daughter.
Yeah.
You know, she's you know, I'm sure she's got something to do with the estate. I'm sure she can get it done. But
yeah.
This was a Warner Brothers movie, or no, this was 20th Century Fox, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
So, I think it was 20th Century Fox. I'm fascinated by that because I also think that because of this movie not being received well and not doing very well, that it kind of was one of the stumbling blocks for getting Star Wars made in the first place. So there's a lot of legacy to this film, and I'm sure other people have covered that, and you know, I just wanted to touch on it. But John Boorman's a fascinating director, a fascinating human being. I know that there's a director's commentary on the Blu-ray for this, and I would love to hear.
Oh, I'd love
what
to
he
hear
had
that
say.
too. Would love to hear that.
But
that'd be great.
But that's all I can think of. What else you got?
That's all I got too.
Yeah.
Rent it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
For
$2.99 and it's
or $3.99. It doesn't matter. Just even if it's $5.99, rent it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Absolutely. But this is my turn. I get to pick what we're watching next, don't I?
Yes. So Tony, what are we watching next? Because I know you gave zero thought to this.
Actually, no. I did give some thoughts to this, and I'm going to go back. We're going old school. It is a old, I believe, 1992. It has Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton, and we are going to watch a movie you've probably never heard of that I dearly love. So I'm sure that, you know, it'll get 30, 40 views tops. It's One False Move. So, and it is right now available on, I think, Tubi for free with ads. But so if you want to watch that and hear our discussion about that, by all means do. And while you're down there, like, you know, the subscribe thing, and
all that fun stuff.
I also want to say, for the people that blew up the over the top video,
Thank you
so
much
for tuning in and watching and subscribing and all that. And
I thought we were getting Cobra next. I thought for sure it was going to happen.
Oh, we're getting it. I'm giving you a Stallone Travolta break. I'm giving you a little bit of breathing room before the onslaught truly begins, because there are so many garbage Stallone films that I just can't wait to talk about.
Throw it down in the comments. Let us know what the hell you want. And we'll see you the next time.
while you're putting your shit in your Ridge wallet, you need to be building your website on Squarespace while listening to an audiobook from an Audible, and then have something from Mubi on in the background because it's a professionally curated movie streaming service that, you know, will apparently just give you a hand job while you watch your favorite films that you've
Nice.
So
I'll subscribe to that service.
Yeah. So it's and you know, let's not forget that you'd be listening to all this with your Raycon earbuds.
Oh yeah.
They're half the price of other premium earbuds, but these will give you an ear infection that's incurable and then will cause brain cancer and you'll die.
All right.
Raycon.